Good evening, it's Tuesday the 25th of March and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Security breach. Atlantic editor accidentally added to Trump officials' war planning chat. Ceasefire talks. US and Russia hold 12-hour negotiation over Ukraine war. Comedy honors. Conan accepts prize, denounces bullies in bold speech.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again. In a significant security lapse, the Atlantic editor-in-chief was inadvertently included in a group chat discussing sensitive military strategies, raising concerns over communication protocols with the administration.
Days before U.S. fighter jets took off from the aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman in the Red Sea for strikes against the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, a security breach with potentially catastrophic consequences for the U.S. military. Details of the U.S. war plans shared in real time with the Atlantic's editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg by accident on the unclassified commercial messaging app Signal. But it was deadly serious. Goldberg says he was added by a user, National Security Advisor Mike Walls, to a group chat, including the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Defense Secretary, the CIA Director, and the Director of National Intelligence, sharing precise information about weapons packages, targets, and timing. Goldberg says at one point the Vice President called the timing of the attack on the Houthis, who've been striking international ships in the Red Sea for 2 years, a mistake, because it conflicts with the President's message to end the war in Ukraine. The National Security Council says the chat appears to be authentic, adding, "We are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain, and there was no threats to our service members or our national security." The President reacting tonight.
The Houthis, you mean the attack on the Houthis? Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective, I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it.
The FBI has classified recent violent attacks targeting Tesla facilities as domestic terrorism, highlighting the escalating threats against the company and underscoring the need of enhanced security measures in the tech industry.
Tonight, the nationwide protest targeting Tesla and its CEO Elon Musk escalating. In Austin, Texas this morning, police finding multiple incendiary devices placed at a Tesla showroom. Nobody was injured, but the incident just the latest attack on Tesla, which has become a political flashpoint by those frustrated with Musk's role in the federal government and Doge spending cuts. During a cabinet meeting today, Musk saying Doge employees are facing daily death threats.
A lot of them are just kids, they're just trying to help out, and they're very talented. They could get jobs for millions of dollars a year. Instead, they come here, earn peanuts, and get death threats.
Tonight, FBI Director Kash Patel calling attacks on Tesla cars, showrooms, and charging stations domestic terrorism and launching a new task force to investigate and find the perpetrators. This is a doxing website resurfaced, publishing some contact information for Tesla owners. Protesters gathered over the weekend at nearly 90 Tesla showrooms, calling on people to sell their Teslas and dump their stock. While mostly peaceful, some turning confrontational. In Berkeley, California, a 33-year-old counter-protester arrested after whipping out a stun gun. And in Palm Beach County, Florida, a Trump supporter charged with assault after driving his car towards protesters, narrowly avoiding them.
As trade disputes intensify, China is actively engaging foreign chief executives, aiming to bolster international business relations and mitigate the impact of ongoing economic frictions with the global trading partners.
China is trying to convince foreign company chiefs it's still a good place to do business. On Sunday and Monday, Beijing hosted a forum for top CEOs. In attendance were the heads of companies including Apple, Qualcomm and AstraZeneca. China is keen to woo investment as trade tensions mount. US President Donald Trump has already imposed a new 20% tariff on all Chinese goods and threatened to do more.
If we can't make a deal with China, then the tariffs will be very, very substantial.
He's accused Beijing of doing too little to stem the flow of fentanyl into the US, something China strongly denies. On Sunday, Trump-supporting Republican Congressman Steve Daines met Chinese Premier Li Qiang. It was the first time a US politician has visited China since Trump took office. And it comes as Beijing seeks a high-level dialogue in the hope of averting further tariffs. Daines called the meeting a chance to air US views on the business environment in the country. Speaking at the corporate forum that day, Li urged countries to open their markets to combat what he called rising instability. State broadcaster CCTV says some 86 company representatives from 21 countries attended the event, with American firms the largest national contingent. However, the number of US chiefs was down from last year. Later in the week, some of those business leaders are expected to meet up with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
In a landmark decision, South Korea's judiciary has reinstated Han Duck-seo as acting president, a move anticipated to stabilize the nation's political landscape amidst recent upheavals and leadership uncertainties.
In the latest turn in South Korea's political turmoil, the country's constitutional court reinstated Prime Minister Han Duck-seo as acting president on Monday. He had taken over as acting leader from President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was impeached over briefly imposing martial law in December. Han only lasted 2 weeks in the job before he himself was impeached and suspended. Speaking after the court's dismissal, Han turned to the threat of potential tariffs on South Korea from US President Donald Trump.
저는 대통령 권한대행으로서
As acting president, I will put all my efforts to maintain a stable administration in accordance with the Constitution and laws, and I will use every wisdom and ability to securing Korea's national interests amid the trade war that has already become a reality.
쏟아붓겠습니다.
The ruling immediately returns Han to power after months of political chaos in the country. He thanked the court for its wise decision and the cabinet for their hard work during his suspension. Yoon's martial law declaration plunged the key US military ally into its greatest political crisis in decades. It led to a leadership vacuum amid spiraling impeachments, resignations, and criminal indictments for a range of top officials. Han's impeachment came after clashing with the opposition-led parliament. In the coming days, the Constitutional Court is expected to make a decision on Yoon's impeachment, and if he's removed, an election will be held within 60 days. In the months since Yoon declared martial law, South Korea has been bracing for the potential impact from a range of Trump tariffs. Earlier this month, Trump singled out South Korea for applying high tariffs on US exports. It's already been slapped with duties on steel and aluminum and has been seeking an exemption from the reciprocal US levies set to come next month.
Japan faces economic headwinds as both manufacturing output and service sector activities decline, dampening prospects for growth and prompting concerns about the nation's financial stability in the global market.
A manufacturing slowdown is sapping hopes for Japan's economy. Figures out Monday showed factory activity falling at its fastest pace in a year. The closely watched Purchasing Managers Index for Manufacturing from AU Jibun Bank fell to 48.3 from 49 previously. That's well below the key 50-point mark that would indicate rising activity. The data pointed to declines in production and new orders. Firms cited worries including rising costs, labour shortages and uncertainty over mounting global trade tensions. Inflationary pressures remained high, with both input costs and selling prices still on an upward trend. However, companies did increase employment for a fourth straight month. The service sector, which had been a bright spot, also lost momentum, with business activity contracting for the first time in 5 months. The headline figure for the sector sank to 49.5 in March, way down on the previous month's 53.7. Numbers out last week showed shoppers are battling soaring prices for everyday goods, with the cost of rice up more than 80% year on year. Analysts say the rising inflationary pressures increase the chances of more rate hikes by the Bank of Japan over the coming months.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news right after this. And welcome back. Americans and Russian diplomats have concluded marathon negotiations aimed at establishing a ceasefire in Ukraine, reflecting intensified efforts to resolve the conflict and address the humanitarian crisis in the region.
While talks aimed at establishing a partial ceasefire in Ukraine were ongoing in Riyadh, with a Black Sea ceasefire also topping the meeting agenda, hostilities persisted on the ground in the Sumy region. The talks behind closed doors focused on implementing a 30-day pause in attacks targeting energy infrastructure. While both the U.S. and Russian parties acknowledged the importance of reducing hostilities, disagreements emerged. Discussions also touched upon halting Black Sea attacks to safeguard commercial shipping routes. A joint statement is to be published on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Russian forces launched a missile strike in Sumy, northeastern Ukraine, injuring nearly 90 people, including 17 children.
In Turkey, violent confrontations between law enforcement and demonstrators have led to more than 1,000 arrests, highlighting escalating tensions and civil unrest within the nation's major urban centers.
Amid the widespread protests in Turkey following the detention of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, more than 1,000 people have been arrested. The country's interior minister reported on Monday that 1,133 people across Turkey had been taken into custody between March 19th and March 23rd for illegal activities carried out while protesting the arrest of İmamoğlu, a prominent opposition figure and potential presidential candidate. Tens of thousands took to the streets in cities such as Istanbul and Ankara, participating in the largest demonstrations in the country in more than a decade. Law enforcement responded by employing tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets to disperse crowds. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the demonstrations, calling them a movement of violence.
Israeli military operations in Gaza have escalated, with reports confirming strikes on a hospital facility, raising international concerns over civilian safety and the humanitarian impact of the ongoing conflict.
Outside, crews work to extinguish flames, while inside, people search through the rubble. This is the chaotic aftermath of an Israeli airstrike on Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, which killed 5 people and wounded several others, an attack condemned by the facility's staff. The Israeli military said it had targeted a Hamas official, adding it used precise munitions to minimize harm. The group confirmed Ismail Barhoum, a member of its political wing who dealt with financial affairs, had been killed. Hamas media said he had been receiving treatment for wounds sustained in a previous attack. Barhoum is one of multiple Hamas officials that Israel says it's killed since resuming fighting last week. Meanwhile, the Israeli army is ramping up operations on the ground, with thousands of troops preparing to join. On Sunday, the IDF said soldiers were fighting in Beit Hanun in the north and had encircled Tel al-Sultan in Rafah. Troops have operated in Tel al-Sultan in the past, uncovering a network of tunnels there last year. The army said it was allowing the evacuation of civilians. Many were seen fleeing on foot. Most of those fleeing headed to Mawasi, a sprawling encampment along the coast. The war has displaced most of Gaza's population of over 2 million, often multiple times.
Following an assault on the French rabbi, citizens have taken to the streets to protest the surge of anti-Semitic incidents, calling for stronger measures to combat hate crimes and ensure community safety.
We will not hide. That's the message from these Jewish protesters in Paris who gathered on Sunday to warn against a rise in anti-Semitism in France. The rally followed an attack in the city of Orléans. On Saturday, the city's chief rabbi was assaulted as he left a Sabbath service with his young son. It was filmed by an eyewitness. An investigation is underway and one teenage suspect is in detention. For the Jewish community of Orléans, it's part of a disturbing trend since October 7th, 2023, with incidents targeting Jews escalating from anti-Semitic graffiti to violent attacks. According to French government figures, there were more than 1,500 anti-Semitic incidents reported across the country last year, similar to the previous year's number, but a large jump from 2022 when fewer than 500 incidents were reported. Jewish campaigners accuse France's hard-left parties of being part of a wave of anti-Semitism, saying that, among other things, they have minimised Hamas attacks, used imagery evoking anti-Semitic caricatures, and declined to participate in protests against anti-Semitism. Leftist politicians say their absence from those marches was because of the presence of the far-right National Rally. The main umbrella organisation of French Jewish groups is seeking to distance itself from the National Rally, saying the fight against anti-Semitism should not be exploited politically.
Usha Vance has been named the head of U.S. delegation in Greenland, signalling strategic interest in Arctic affairs and aiming to strengthen diplomatic and environmental collaborations in the region.
U.S. Second Lady Usha Vance will lead a delegation to Greenland this week to visit an American military base and watch a dog sled race. The trip comes as President Donald Trump escalates his campaign to annex the strategic Arctic island. The delegation includes White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Energy Secretary Chris Wright. The pair plan to visit the Patuxent U.S. military space base on the island's northwest coast, where they will be briefed by service members. They will then join Vance to visit historical sites and attend the national dog sled race. Spokesman for the White House National Security Council, Brian Hughes, said the U.S. team is, quote, confident that this visit presents an opportunity to build on partnerships that respects Greenland's self-determination and advances economic cooperation. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said in a written comment reacting to news of the visit that, quote, this is something we take seriously. Trump has made U.S. annexation of the vast mineral-rich island a major talking point during his second term. Just last week, he told NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte that U.S. control of Greenland is necessary to enhance international security. The governments of both Greenland and Denmark have voiced opposition to the move. Opinion polls suggest that most Greenlanders oppose joining the U.S., although a majority favor eventual independence from Denmark.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And welcome back. Comedian Conan O'Brien has been honored with the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. In his acceptance speech, he condemns social bullies, emphasizing the importance of resilience and kindness in today's discourse.
When longtime late-night television host and comedian Conan O'Brien accepted the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor on Sunday, he didn't just offer thanks. He also made not-so-subtle comments against President Donald Trump, whose takeover of the Kennedy Center, which awarded the prize, has shaken the arts world.
Twain hated bullies. He punched up, not down, and he deeply, deeply empathized with the weak. Twain was allergic to hypocrisy, and he loathed racism.
A host of comedians, including David Letterman, Adam Sandler, Sarah Silverman, Stephen Colbert, and Will Ferrell, also ribbed the Trump administration whilst honoring O'Brien. The show marked the first major event at the Kennedy Center since Trump announced that he would become chairman of the institution, pushing out billionaire philanthropist David Rubenstein. A new board, which includes White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and Vice President J.D. Vance's wife, Usha Vance, fired the Kennedy Center's former president, Deborah Rotter. In his remarks, O'Brien thanked both Rubenstein and Rotter, drawing loud applause from the audience.
Demonstrating remarkable endurance, a visually impaired athlete has achieved the Everesting challenge, ascending and descending a hill until reaching the elevation equivalent to Mount Everest, inspiring many worldwide.
This is blind ultramarathon runner Viktor Asenov scaling Vitosha Mountain near Bulgaria's capital Sofia at the weekend. It's an ascent he completed 19 times over a 2-day period, without sleep and only stopping to eat. This type of challenge is known as Everesting, repeatedly scaling a mountain non-stop to climb the cumulative equivalent of the height of Mount Everest. Asenov, alongside his guide dog Taddy, began the endurance challenge on Friday morning. He is one of the few blind ultramarathon runners in Europe and was aiming to raise funds for a guide dog school at the Eyes on Four Paws Foundation in Sofia. It is the only school of its kind in the Balkan nation. Pacers escorted Asenov throughout the challenge. He said their encouragement helped him to fight off the physical and mental fatigue and make it to the finish line.
In France, a woman and her companion pigs are challenging conventional dietary norms, sparking conversations about animal companionship and prompting alternative perspectives on meat consumptions in the contemporary society.
Manoro keeps 6 pet pigs, in the way many people have dogs or cats. Adopting them is a way of encouraging people to change their view of pigs as animals for human consumption, she says. While Gustave and Léon live inside Rose's house in Guingamp, France, her 4 other pigs live outside in her backyard. She feeds them, bathes them, takes them for walks in nearby countryside paths, gives them toys including a miniature piano, and has even trained them to sit, shake trotters and turn around. Gustave also regularly visits Rose's workplace, where she's employed as a laboratory technician at the local university. He has become something of a university mascot, says her colleague Annalise Lefloc.
Well, that's a wrap from all of us on World News Tonight. Stay tuned as Anuradhi Vikramasinghe will join you shortly with the nightly business report. I'm Marsha Fernando and we leave you with the visuals of Saudi Arabia's art scene flourishing in the Jax district. Thank you for watching and have a great night.